XRP overtaking Ethereum. Now, I nearly spat out my coffee. It sounds ridiculous, right? But then I remembered. I've actually seen this happen before, and it might just happen again. Let me take you back to the moment that changed how I see this crazy market, right? It's early morning. I'm bleary-eyed, scrolling through crypto news as usual. Suddenly, I see a headline, XRP dethrones Ethereum. Now, my first thought was, nah, there's no way. Ethereum has been the king of altcoins since, well, forever. XRP overtaking Ethereum? Well, it actually felt like hearing the moon grew a second moon, right? So, of course, I nearly choke on my coffee, but curiosity just got the better of me. I just kept reading and my skepticism started to crack. So here is the wild part, right? I wasn't actually dreaming. There was a time that XRP actually leapfrogged Ethereum, if only for a short, glorious moment. Flashback to January of 2018, right? The peak of the crypto madness. I remember it like a half-forgotten dream. Bitcoin was going nuts, and out of nowhere, XRP's price exploded so high that its market cap briefly surpassed Ethereum's. And yeah, XRP was number 2 crypto on the planet for about 1 week. Now, I had to rub my eyes and double check CoinMarketCap. It was indeed real. The XRP Army was celebrating like it had won the World Cup. And honestly, even as someone who held a little XRP back then, I was stunned. It felt like seeing the underdog boxer knock down the champ in round 1. So of course, Ethereum being the seasoned fighter, it got back up and reclaimed its spot soon after. But that week is forever etched in my memory as proof that anything can happen in crypto. Now, let's zoom back to today, 2025. XRP is making headlines again, climbing the ranks. In fact, for most of July, it's been sitting pretty as the 3rd most valuable crypto. Now, if you haven't been following, here's a quick catch-up. XRP blew past Tether, USDT, in the 2nd week of July to snag the number 3 spot. Its market cap shot above $160 billion, then kept roaring up to around $216 billion shortly after, which is actually its highest valuation ever. So let's let that sink in. Now, higher than even during the 2017-2018 mania I just mentioned before. So the price of 1 XRP is chilling above $3 now. Now that alone had old-timers like me raising an eyebrow, right? Because XRP didn't see $3 in ages. And all this action, I should say, started people whispering once again, could XRP take it even further? Could it, maybe, possibly, dare I say it, surpass Ethereum? So on paper, it sounds like a tall tale. I mean, Ethereum is, well, Ethereum, the number 2 crypto with a massive ecosystem behind it, right? So let's lay the scoreboard right now. Ethereum is trading at around $3,800, a coin as we kind of speak, after a big rally, and its market cap roughly $467 billion. Meanwhile, XRP, even after its own impressive surge, is above $3 and has a market cap in the kind of ballpark figure of $187 billion. It's still a huge number, but it's not even half of Ethereum's. Now, it's like comparing a strong college team to an NBA champion. There's a gap. And over the past month, ironically, Ethereum actually pulled ahead even more. It rose about 57% in value over 30 days, whereas XRP only rose 43%. So Ethereum basically said, not so fast, and kind of widened the lead a little bit here, right? Important to note, though, that Ethereum's not just going to roll over and hand XRP the silver medal without a fight, right? So what would it take for XRP to actually leapfrog Ethereum's market cap now? Well, let's do some no-nonsense math. And I promise I'm going to keep it painless. Right? If Ethereum's market cap stayed at around $467 billion, XRP would need to roughly double and then some to catch up. Now, at XRP's current price of around $3.16 at the point of recording, doubling only gets you to around $6.30, which isn't quite enough. It actually needs to be about 2.5 times jump. So we're looking at an XRP price of roughly $8 to match Ethereum's market cap. Maybe a hair more before it kind of firmly pass it, right? So $8 for 1 XRP. So just imagine that for a second then, right? For those counting, that would put XRP's market valuation over $800 billion, which sounds, absurdly bonkers, because it's nearly $1 trillion. But hey, we live in a world where trillion-dollar tech companies are now a thing. So never say never, right? However, here is the catch. All that was assuming that Ethereum stands still, and Ethereum, as we've seen, has no intention of standing still. So if ETH's price continues climbing, or keeps climbing, say from 3.8k to let's say 5k or 10k, the next XRP's target to flip it kind of moves further out like a mirage. Now, the higher that Ethereum goes, the harder the climb for XRP. It's like trying to catch a friend who's on an escalator that's also going up, right? You can run, at least you got to run way faster just to be able to catch up. A lot of folk would stop right here and say, all right, so basically XRP flipping ETH is impossible unless Ethereum crashes. But hold on for just a minute. This is crypto that we're talking about. Crazy things happen here all the time. And there are some very smart people and hardcore believers who think that XRP has a real shot, even without Ethereum crashing and burning. In fact, analysts and influencers are already out there making some pretty bold predictions for XRP. One market watcher that I follow, a guy named Zach Rector, he has practically been yelling from the rooftops that a big XRP breakout is imminent. Now he's talking XRP or blasting into the kind of $4 to $5 range any day now. And get this, he even mentioned a potential surge up to $15 by early September. $15. Now I had to replay that part to make sure that I heard it right. If XRP hits $15, do you know what that would mean? Well, let's paint the picture. At $15 per XRP, given how many XRP exist, we're going to be talking about close to a $900 billion market cap, 900 billion. Now that would not just surpass Ethereum, it would leave it in the dust unless Ethereum also doubles at the same time. So for context, $900 billion is roughly double Ethereum's current valuation. So that kind of flippening would be the crypto equivalent of a Honda Civic overtaking a Ferrari on a highway because the Ferrari hit a speed bump. It sounds crazy, it's borderline unimaginable. A 380% increase in XRP in just a couple of months. Now it takes, at least in traditional markets, I should say, I would laugh you out of the room, but in crypto, I've learned not to rule out anything. Now Bitcoin did a 20x in 2017. Dogecoin went full meme mode and multiplied like 100x in a year. So wild? Yeah. Impossible? Not entirely. Now, before you go and rush out and FOMO into a bunch of XRP or Ethereum or whatever because some dude on YouTube says, hi, my name is talking about some kind of big move, let's just hit pause for a second. And this one might just shock you, but I'm not a financial advisor and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile and you could lose all of the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. After all, your investments are entirely your responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses, and this video today is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Alright, so I'm glad that we got that out of the way. I know it was a bit of a mouthful, but it needed to be said. Now, where were we? Yes, crazy predictions and the realm of possibilities. So, can we find any solid reasoning behind these bullish calls? Or is it all just pure hopium? Why are people like Zach so convinced that XRP is coiled for a leap? Well, part of it is down to the momentum and the chart patterns. Technical stuff that chart gurus get excited about. Now XRP has broken past that $3 barrier, which was at least a huge psychological hurdle to start with. It's a multi-year high Often when an asset kind of clears this big historic resistance, like its old previous record high, it actually attracts a flood of new interest. It's kind of breaking a long-standing sports record. Right? The feat itself, generates buzz, and more people start paying attention, which can create a self-fulfilling push higher, at least for a little while. There are also the fundamental side of this story. XRP's recent years were overshadowed by that infamous legal battle with the SEC. For a long time, XRP was the black sheep of crypto. The US exchanges delisted it. A lot of investors wouldn't even touch it because the regulators basically slapped a big question mark on it. Is it a security? Will Ripple lose the case? It kind of felt like XRP was playing one of those, at least playing with one hand tied behind its back, right? But then, of course, not too long ago, we got a bit of a bombshell court decision that gave XRP a new lease of life. A judge ruled that XRP isn't in itself a security when sold to the public, and boom. Almost immediately, big exchanges relisted it, and confidence just rushed back in. One huge shadow overhanging, XRP just lifted. And on top of that, Ripple, the company associated with XRP, just kept busy during the dark times, pushing its technology to banks and payment providers. Right, there was talks of XRP being used more in global money transfers. And if those efforts really start bearing kind of fruit, well, we're going to be talking real utility, not just speculation. So we've got a scenario where a lot of pent-up positive catalysts for XRP are now in play. Legal clarity, renewed exchange support, the potential adoption in the finance world, even ETFs. This is a big reason that some people are optimistic that XRP's price could go on a run that outpaces the broader market. Another reason, those whispers of institutional interest, and this is kind of where our friend John Deaton comes in. If you know John, he is basically the attorney who became kind of a hero in the XRP community by advocating for XRP holders during the SEC saga. Now, John has hinted that Wall Street might be eyeing XRP on the down low. Silent Wall Street interest, he calls it. Now, think about that. Big money players quietly accumulating, or at least preparing to, possibly through vehicles like ETFs. I mean, if a Bitcoin spot ETF is likely, to kind of, or I should say, has pulled in the billions of dollars that it has, who's to say that an XRP ETF couldn't become a thing that does the same, at least eventually, right? Even rumors of an ETF can send a price into overdrive, right? We've seen how Bitcoin and Ethereum have performed. Now, if suits and institutions decide that XRP is their next darling, the demand could explode overnight. And if demand explodes, well, you can guess what happens to the price. Now, John isn't alone. There's also a Harvard-trained engineer, Austin King, who weighed in on the XRP versus ETH debate. Now, his take was intriguing. He points out that at least some potential kind of cracks in Ethereum's armor. See, Ethereum, for all its kind of strengths, is not invincible. One issue is its supply dynamics. Ethereum used to have a pretty high inflation rate for a crypto, new ETH being created with no hard cap, that is. And although recent upgrades have reduced the issuance and even made ETH deflationary at times, it's a complex situation, and Austin highlights the inflationary risks, maybe meaning that if Ethereum supply starts growing or people perceive it as not as sound as, let's say, Bitcoin's fixed supply or XRP's controlled supply, that could turn some investors off. I mean, after all, Ethereum could theoretically just mint more ETH. Now, he also noted that rising competition Ethereum faces, right? And no boy, is that competition real, right? The smart contract realm that Ethereum pioneered is now crowded with rivals, Solana, Cardano, Polkadot, Sui, Aptos, you name it. And while, Ethereum is still the 800-pound gorilla with most DeFi NFT activity, it's not the only show in town. And if hypothetically Ethereum were to lose significant market share to newer chains, let's say developers and users flock to other platforms, its growth might slow relative to something like XRP, which plays in a different niche and isn't facing the kind of competitive problem that Ethereum is, at least in the same way. This is a little bit of a long shot scenario, but it's one of those perfect storm arguments for XRP. If Ethereum stumbles or stagnates due to its own issues, while XRP gains favor and momentum. Now, let's flip the script for just a second and talk about Ethereum's resilience, because the coin has a habit of surprising the skeptics, right? Remember those times when people said Ethereum is dead? It usually happens, when Ethereum lagged behind Bitcoin during some rally, or when ETH fees got insanely high and everyone was complaining. I mean, it's the world's most expensive shitcoin at times, right? Then there was one stretch, late 2020, early 2021, when Bitcoin was booming and Ethereum hadn't hit a new high yet. I saw so many hot takes on Twitter. ETH is over, it's too slow, it's too expensive, XYZ, new chain, will take over. A lot of people really doubted Ethereum, but then as if to prove a point, ETH kind of came roaring back, hit a new all-time highs, and transitioned to proof of stake, reducing its issuance. Fast forward to now, in just the last 12 weeks, Ethereum price has kind of been more than doubled, right? 112%. That's actually the best performance among big name cryptos within that period. It's like Ethereum heard the doubters and said, hold my beer, before absolutely taking off. This rally reminded everyone that Ethereum is still a powerhouse. In fact, Ethereum's big comeback has gotten some prominent crypto voices extremely bullish on its long-term prospects. I've seen predictions floating around for ETH going to $50,000, even $60,000 per coin in the future. And I know those numbers sound like they belong in science fiction. I mean, $60,000 per ETH would give Ethereum a multi-trillion-dollar market cap, truly head-spinning figures. Well, whether that ever happens is anyone's kind of guess here. Crypto predictions love to be wrong after all, right? But just the fact that serious people are throwing out numbers like that tell you that Ethereum is doing a lot of right things to inspire such confidence. But I'm still on the fence of Blockbuster and Netflix. I see Ethereum as the blockbuster here. So, where does that leave XRP's chances of catching up to Ethereum? Well, I'll be real with you. If Ethereum is on a steady trajectory upwards, let alone to crazy 50k predictions, well, XRP has a steep hill to climb to even keep up pace, much less overtake it. So if ETH wants to, or at least went to, let's say $10,000 in the next cycle, that alone would double its market cap from here. XRP would likely need to double just to maintain the gap, let alone close it. So if we're kind of talking Ethereum in the stratosphere, $60,000 someday, then yeah, XRP flipping ETH would require XRP to be dozens of dollars, which is far beyond even the rosiest short-term predictions that are out there. So realistically, for XRP to overtake Ethereum, we probably need some scenario where Ethereum's growth is relatively modest or pauses, which is what I do see, while XRP goes absolutely parabolic on its own catalyst, which I also see. We have Ethereum ETFs not really driving Ethereum very far, but the potential for XRP ETFs to really push the boundaries. So let's just imagine a scenario then that's more feasible, best case scenario for XRP, right? Ethereum just keeps growing, but it's at a typical kind of pace, not too dramatic. Maybe it consolidates for a while around a certain level. Meanwhile, XRP gets a cascade of good news and hype. Perhaps Ripple wins decisively against the SEC on all remaining fronts. Total victory lap. Major banks announce that they're implementing XRP for cross-border settlement. And maybe, just maybe, an XRP ETF gets filed and approved, signaling big institutional adoption. If all of that happens in a very short span, you can bet that XRP's price could go vertical, right? The narrative would actually shift to XRP is the next big thing, and money across the crypto world and new money from outside could flood in. I could see rotations happening from Bitcoin ETFs, Ethereum ETFs into potential XRP ETFs, where something as outlandish as kind of catching up to Ethereum starts to become less remotely possible. So if one morning I woke up to find XRP sitting above Ethereum on the crypto rankings, I would probably understand the logic that went behind it before spitting out my coffee all over the place, right? It would be the kind of talk of the crypto community. Picture the scene, right? Social media would erupt, of course. XRP holders everywhere would be tweeting victory memes, maybe a few I told you so posts aimed at the doubters, right? The term flippening, usually used for ETH versus Bitcoin, could actually, hey, be applied here too, right? Would be trending, maybe even for sure, right? The Ethereum crowd might be defensive or potentially in disbelief, saying that it's just temporary, or pointing out how Ethereum's fundamentals are still strong. Right? They'd have a fair point fundamentally, to be honest, but again, until they do something that kind of fixes some of the underlying issues, I still see them as the blockbuster versus the Netflix. Bitcoin people, though, who love any drama, that isn't about Bitcoin, would probably just be sitting back eating popcorn and just watching the chaos unfold. It would be a day for crypto history books for sure. The big question, though, if XRP did flip ETH, could it actually stay on top? Or would Ethereum just snatch the spot right back? Now, history suggests that Ethereum wouldn't go out quietly. Remember back in 2018, XRP's stint as number 2 was very brief. Ethereum took back the throne not that long after. If it does happen again, I'd expect a bit of a tussle. Maybe they would trade places a few times if the market was really volatile. And honestly, if XRP got that huge, near $900 billion market cap in today's terms, a lot of people might actually be taking profits, which could actually lead to a pullback. Meanwhile, of course, any dip in ETH could be seen as a discount and people would potentially be buying it up. So it could be a bit of a seesaw battle. Fun to imagine, but hard to say how it would actually play out in reality. Now, I know I sound pretty enthusiastic about the possibility, right? That's the storyteller in me, right? But here's the full disclosure. I hold some XRP and I hold some Ethereum too. I'm not exclusively a fanboy of one or the other, right? I'm one of those that sees a place for multiple winners in the crypto sector, right? So when I root for XRP as the underdog, it's not because I want to see Ethereum fail, not at all. In fact, Ethereum is like the established kind of star quarterback, and XRP is the underdog challenger. As a fan of the game, of course, I just love a good underdog story. So if XRP did somehow pull off this upset, it wouldn't mean that Ethereum is suddenly bad or anything like that. It just means that XRP had a moment to shine brighter, possibly because the specific circumstances. And I also hope that Ethereum can sort out the blockbuster versus Netflix similarities that I'm seeing, the, BlackBerry versus iPhone scenarios. If they can continue to develop and fix some of the underlying issues, such as gas fees and the inflationary aspects, then maybe, just maybe, there's a possibility that it has the staying power. So whether or not XRP does overtake Ethereum, one thing is clear to me. The crypto world today is not the same as it was a few years ago. And who could have guessed back then, say 2020 or 2021, during the depths of the lawsuit, that XRP would come roaring back to new all-time highs and even make us entertain this conversation seriously, right? It shows how quickly things can change. The fact that we're even talking about XRP potentially becoming the number 2 crypto again means that the landscape is shifting and new opportunities and surprises keep popping up. Now, if you found this stuff as fascinating as I do, I want to extend an invite. Join our community discussions. Hang out in our free educational Discord server. The link is in the description, right? It's basically a bunch of us crypto enthusiasts sharing news, arguing politely about things like XRP versus ETH, and helping each other understand this wild market. It's a great place to learn and not go it all alone. Plus, I'm in there pretty often, so you can come and say hi and let me know what you think about all of this. I love hearing different perspectives, especially on a topic as polarizing as XRP overtaking Ethereum. Also, quick transparency moment, if you're looking for a reliable exchange and you're kind of thinking of trading some XRP or Ethereum, I personally use Kraken Pro quite a bit. I even have an affiliate link for Kraken Pro in the description. Now, using that link supports the channel here. You've got to keep the coffee supply flowing after all. There's no pressure to use it, but if you do use it, it's a big thank you from me. All right, let's wrap this up and bring it all home. Can XRP overtake Ethereum? The odds might be long, but after everything that I've seen in crypto, I'm not ruling it out, right? Ethereum is the heavyweight champ and it's doing great. That's undeniable at the minute. XRP is the scrappy contender that's kind of punching above its weight recently. For XRP to win this bout, a lot needs to be right for XRP, and maybe Ethereum needs to slow down a bit too. It's a challenge, or at least a challenging path, no doubt. But even if it happens, never happens, the fact that we're seeing XRP thrive today is a win in itself for the community, right? It's been a long, hard road from the dark days of the lawsuit to where we are right now. And who knows, maybe the real takeaway is that crypto is no longer just one or two player show. We're possibly entering a time where several networks can be incredibly valuable in their own domains. Ethereum is smart contracts, XRP is global payments. They can coexist and make each other better in a whole new way. Personally, I'm going to be watching both. I'm going to cheer for XRP to potentially pull off this upset, and I'll also celebrate Ethereum's successes. I think both technologies are pushing the industry forward in different ways. If XRP does something spectacular like flipping ETH, you can bet that I'll be here making a video about it. I guess astonished grin on my face. And if it doesn't, well, I'm still going to be here talking about the next big twist in this never boring crypto saga. So either way, it's one heck of a ride, and I'm glad to be on it with all of you. The crypto story is far from over. In fact, I suspect the juiciest chapter is yet to come. So hit that subscribe button and join me on the next adventure. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss what's coming next.